One video starting. Test.
Test. Test. Test. 3 mics.
Here we go. Welcome, everybody. Tom and Q Show, episode 12. Here we are on May 3rd. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Justin Epure of Ruoff Mortgage. We're live out here at Ruoff Mortgage. We just did a fantastic video shoot that you guys will see probably coming up in the next, I would say in the next week, 2 weeks.
Yep.
It'll be awesome, really just kind of showing what they do. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but we're also going to get into our regular show. So I'm Tom, this is Q, that's Justin. We've got 3 mics working. So this is kind of a milestone moment for our show and the tens and tens of people that listen to it.
Matt Haverkamp Foundation. Let's do it again.
Yeah, it's working. Today is the day where technologically
We've advanced.
we have succeeded.
We've
But
evolved.
we have credited it to the Ruoff internet. Right?
Yes,
So
yes.
The Ruoff Internet.
High speed.
Yeah, it's been great. It was relatively simple. You guys have been with us and have seen the issues we've had. We're just a little late, but that was mostly due to running long on the shoot. So, Justin, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Appreciate you guys having me. And I'm a regular watcher of the show, so I'm excited to finally be on here and talk about everything, right?
Yeah.
I guess one of our 10 are here, so we got 9 watching. Thanks.
Yes, yeah. See if we can't boost that up. Maybe find somebody. Maybe Hans has a friend in Germany or something like that.
Know some financing.
Yeah,
mortgage
never can tell. I also wanted to send a special shout out. So he challenged me to yesterday. So a friend of the program, Chris Jones, we talked about, was going through chemo. Unfortunately, he's going to go back and battle it again. But so he made the comment to me. He said, "You guys better come up with some good shows." When he told me he was going through it again, he goes, "You guys better come up with some good shows because I'm getting ready to go through this again." I was like, "Challenge accepted."
Yes.
So, and I told him, I said, "Hey, we're gonna be out here today, talking with Justin and some different things." So, man, the pressure's on.
Yeah, we've got to come through on some things.
I didn't feel the pressure, but now I kind of.
Now you do, right? Now you do.
Good.
It's all right. We'll carry you through this, right? So. Every week about this time, the first thing we go to, we have our podcast. You know, you can catch us here live on Facebook. You can go to which I did not put the video on YouTube. Things just got a little haywire, which the one person that usually downloads it, sorry. We'll do it next week,
That's
maybe.
okay.
Yeah, right.
We have to point out our small following now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we blow up and we
Yeah.
look back and we can stay grounded and stay true to our roots.
Absolutely.
Humility has been a topic for me all weekend since Sunday. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into kind of Tom's weekend or Tom's yesterday, right? But first and foremost, let's check out podcast stats. We don't have Alexa here. We took a tour earlier, and one of the guys that works here, he does have an Alexa, so we kind of thought about maybe seeing if we could get it just to play a little bit of music, but with it raining, we couldn't even get the board in here anyway. The weather's just miserable. Plus, I made it, so it'll run the marker.
Bleeding down, all blurry.
So last week's podcast, Prepared to be Unprepared, we have 9 downloads. So thank you to the 9 people. Nice job.
Keep flirting with that double digits, man.
Let's say
We've got to get over that.
That's all we need.
Consistently.
That's all we need.
Consistency. That's what it's about.
Neurology,
And
science.
brain.
we heard that it boosts like downloads and audience by like
Like it hits-
400%.
Yeah.
Just when you
The
put those
keywords,
in your
yeah.
yeah.
It's like a hashtag, but it's verbal.
Yeah.
Verbal hashtag. I
Yeah.
like that.
So, and we deal in percentages because nobody really cares about the hard number. Everybody just wants to know percentages, right? That's all we care about. So, 100% of our people are in the United States. So,
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
without
Hans, I hope you're okay. Maybe figured out we were calling him Hans and
Took offense to
took
it?
offense to it.
Yeah, we debated if that was the name we wanted to go with.
So,
I think the number 1 name in Germany is Ben. We Googled it.
and we screwed that up then.
I would have thought it was Hans. You would have had me at Hans.
Yeah.
I'd have not thought any different if you convinced me of that. So.
Hans,
Huh.
Booby. So yeah, we're all in the local area, except I don't know where Rocky River, Ohio is. Do you know where Rocky River, Ohio
I
is?
think it's Columbus area.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe eastern Columbus, like out probably 30, 45 minutes east of Columbus. I could be wrong.
So you
sounded pretty specific.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong.
well, you've
Rocky
probably
River. I see a big body of water. You're just west of Cleveland, Westlake
No, I was
area.
way off.
okay.
Just west of, right between Westlake and Cleveland.
Do we know anybody in Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I do.
You do.
Yeah.
LeBron.
You think LeBron is listening?
I don't think he's living there. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think he's living.
Ma-
Yeah, it's so
Season's over.
funny. It's so
He's
funny.
not-
Like
he's
I
not
know,
in LA.
I know enough people from Cleveland that like if it's with LeBron, like they claim Akron, and then if it's not LeBron, it's like, nah, we're two different cities. And it's like, well, you can't claim them in one thing and then not claim them in another. So.
Was that before or after he ruined the Space Jam franchise?
Well, yeah, probably after. A lot after, yeah.
So there you go. So thank you all who downloaded the podcast. We really do appreciate it, regardless of whatever that number is, whether it's 1 or 1 million. It's just cool that somebody took enough interest and listened. So thank you. We have Justin here. He's a specialist and expert in the mortgage industry, and every week, we like to cover, because it's what Quentin and I do, we like to cover a real estate topic. And we just spent about an hour or so here talking with Justin and folks here at his office, just kind of getting the lay of the land and what they do. And we came up with some pretty good topics. And I think the one that struck Q and I the most was we get the question all the time about the bubble's going to burst, or when our price is going to go down, or when's housing going to be available, and what's that timeline? And people freak out. Agents, buyers, sellers, because you have sellers right now like, man, I'd love to sell my house for this inflated price, but then I'm going to buy something at an inflated price if I'm fortunate enough to even get that contract.
Yeah.
You might really need to like your car in this market.
And we alluded to it earlier, the 2008 crash. I think there's still so many fresh wounds from that. So it's that sense of optimism of moving forward. It's like, hold on, remember 2008? That wasn't too long ago. So that's still a fresh wound to society, to this country.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people now that are doing most of the buying and the living and the working, we were all pretty big. You guys might have been just getting started out in life when it kind of started to happen, and my age group, we were right in the thick of it. Whether we were in high school or we saw our parents going through it, aunts, uncles, things like that, and like we said, it kind of made everybody gun shy about like, oh, this is how it works, right? Like this is the progression. It gets built up and then a 40% drop. Well, obviously, the more we know about 2007, 2008, that was a twice in a lifetime with the Great Depression kind of event. So, thinking we're heading down that same road is probably misunderstood by most, I would think.
So it's interesting, and you bring up, the Great Depression, and, if you talk about kind of starting there at timelines, right? The Great Depression, you had folks, going through a really tough time. They had to be good savers, right?
Yeah.
And then you get out of the Great Depression, and then you get to the baby boom after people are returning from war. All of a sudden, everything's great. You got the 60s, hippies, peace, love, everything, peace, love, rock and roll. It takes a dip.
Living life.
Yes,
Yeah.
takes a dip in the 70s, right? And then the 80s come about, and that's kind of, late 70s, early 80s is our generation. What are we, Are we Gen Xers?
Gen X.
Yeah, so we're Gen Xers. And then you get to, as we kind of started out when Nicole and I purchased our first home, it was 2003. And, I wasn't in the business at that time. We buy the house. I think it was $120,000, $130,000 house. Turn around, we sell it in 2012, I think. Quentin was the agent at the time, and man, we took a bath, big time bath on that thing.
Yeah.
And you get to now, you got the millennials out there who also are good savers, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So let's talk. You were saying before, millennials get kind of a bad rap.
Yeah.
So tell us kind of going about it, like what are some indicators, and then talk about how millennials right now are kind of really driving the market, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing, I think the first part of it is, when you look at the millennial, the bulk of, I mean, not quite the bulk of the millennial age group is entering what we call the home buying age, right? You're going to have people, it's, a bell curve essentially, right? Like you're going to have people that buy a house at 21, or heck, I just closed a loan 6 months ago for a 19-year-old, like
Wow,
crazy.
good
for him, right?
Yeah.
You're always going to have those outliers, but the bulk of that age group right now is hitting, that 28 to 32 where, they might not have kids yet, but they're like, okay, it's time for us to kind of make the next step and to buying a home and entering that home buying age. And so that's really the first thing, right? You've got a really large age group they're working against popular. There's a lot of people that are working. I mean, there's obviously some in every age group that are not workers, or they don't work, certain jobs or whatever, but that's the first indicator. You have a large group of people entering the home buying age that have, they've kind of been driving the market for like the last 4 to 5 years, because you kind of had that people that are my brother's age that are, on the front fringe of being a millennial, and then you have me that's kind of in the center, and then Devin, who's my assistant, who's she's 28.
So what is that front fringe? It's like,
I think it's like
84 to 80.
Yeah, I think it's like
somewhere.
84. My brother was born in 85, so
Okay.
So really the last 5 to 6 years, you start to see them becoming the majority of the people buying houses, and it's only going to get more from here on out. For at least the foreseeable future. You're going to have, with birthing rates, if you look at that, that's another key indicator. I don't want to take credit for that. Barry Habib, who's an economist, kind of judges the ebbs and flows of the housing market based on birthing rates, and
So
birthing rates.
what is that gap? I was curious about that. Like, obviously brand new babies ain't buying houses, right? So
So I mean, essentially, you take the third. If you're looking at generations, you can kind of go, and how he explains it, you kind of go 28 to 30 years out from when they were born.
Okay.
So like in 2007, 2008. Now, was that like at the proportions? Yeah, of course. Like 40-50% drop in housing values is not normal. It's only happened one other time, which is the 20s.
Yep.
And I think if you go back into like the early 1800s, I think it happened, but like there's not a lot of good record keeping. It's not like we can go through and like see what houses sold for in the 1800s.
Didn't have the internet then.
Yeah.
we did have the Oregon Trail, though, right?
Yeah. They had to track them, track them down to see what they bought their house for. But that kind of drop has only happened twice. So when you're looking at like the birthing rates and gaps, like 28 to 30 years. So when 2007, 2008 hit, the birthing rates in like the late 60s, early 70s, it took a pretty big decline. So regardless of everything else that happened in 2007, 2008 with your subprime mortgages, people that maybe weren't ready to buy a house were getting loans that probably right now would not get a loan, right? They just wouldn't, with all the the guidelines and things that we have today. But the birthing rates, there was already going to be a little dip in the market.
Yep.
Because of the birthing rates.
And then
There's
just made
less people entering that home buying age of 28 to 32. Maybe even you could extend it out with the millennials to 34. They're buying their first homes. There was already going to be a dip there, and it was exaggerated by the fact that you had bad loans out there, things like that. And then at that point, that we don't have today is they were actually building more houses than we needed. That's not the case today, right? Like, I think I saw something as like we're 5.5, 6 million houses short of demand, which is like nationwide, which is insane.
Now, does that show up on that? Like, if you're looking at that bell curve, does that show up on that bell curve, basically saying, "Hey, we've got a lot of people, and with a lot of people, they need places to live."
Yeah, the millennials, that is kind of, we're coming kind of towards the peak, and there's just going to be more and more entering that, the market, as there already is a ton of them in the market today.
So when you get that birthing rate here, I guess the birthing rate would be here, and then you go 28 years later. If you just mirror those, they would just
essentially,
this,
if you
right?
if you had the old projectors in high school, right?
Yeah,
if
like
you put
an
the graph
EKG
down
on
and
top,
then you put that,
yes.
Outside of like some crazy event that we had no control over, you're gonna kind of, it's obviously not gonna be perfect, but it's kind of gonna flow with it, right?
So I'm curious, and this is again using that math, looking 20, just say 25 years in the future, you have the Coronials, right?
Is that the new generation?
I think so.
And that
I
is-
did not make that up, by
is
the
it
way.
Gen Z is next, right after millennials. Is that what it is? I believe.
I don't know. We don't have Alexa to actually ask those types of
the
questions.
age group has not grown up without an iPhone. Like,
Yeah.
that's what we're kind of getting into. Yeah.
So you're gonna have what, a 2 year or a year and a half or whatever it was that we were all staying at home time frame.
Yeah.
People
And
get
so
people
yeah.
get bored.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at it, there was only so much traveling you could do, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was only certain places you could go, and I think that kind of like pin up the demand too. Like, you have these 28, and like, well, we're on the cusp of like making that next step, and it's like you're sitting at home and you're scrolling Zillow. It's that easy, right? To kind of do that, and you have hours and hours to kill when you're in quarantine or whatever it might have been. To do this, and I think it just kind of pinned that demand up, and you're starting to see more and more people like I think millennials see the investment that can be made. Obviously we talked about generational wealth a lot today. Building that generational wealth, where that might be the only outlet for them to kind of start building generational wealth, right? Like with student loans, like the millennial generation, they're really some of the ones that have felt I guess the brunt end of having a lot of student loans, right? Because student loans have always been around there. We're probably around when you guys went to college. It's like, but as far as having like 40,000, 60,000, so saving money is really hard. But they kind of see the housing outlet as a way to be able to do that.
So if you think about that just logistically, millennials are good savers, right?
Yeah, but like we talked about, as good as the people that kind of lived through the Great Depression and kind of came out on the other end of it.
Yeah, because that previous generation said, "Hey, I got burnt. Prepare yourself for."
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And in the 20s, it was there were stories of people from that first Great Depression when they passed on in life, they were finding cash underneath mattresses and shoebox and closets, and $20,000 in cash just sitting around, because that's what that generation, because they got burnt, and it was ingrained in them to prepare.
Yeah,
So now millennials are not that. Does anybody have cash anymore?
Right.
No. Well, it's funny. Like you had that generation that did the whole like hide my $3,000 under the mattress, and now it's like for millennials, it's like we have cryptocurrency, right?
Right.
So like we're not hiding. Like we're actually making. We don't want paper, right? We want something digital that is easy to spend, easy to move around. So yeah, it's crazy how it's you have that, and then it's like this generation that lived through the Great Recession has cryptocurrency and things like that to kind of do the same things of like a protection of wealth, right?
Yeah.
Or they don't trust banks, so they're going to put it in something else that's not a bank.
Yeah, and I think it's neat in the last few years. I mean, and it's been a few clients, very common, that I'm working with a 28-year-old, and we're going over the financing process, and they're like, "No, we're putting 80 grand down." Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And as a lot of people talk about, like, well, like they're using all these minimum down payments. I'm like, from the loans that I've done, and I work with a lot of millennials because that's my sphere of influence, if you want to call it that. They're not putting minimum amount down. They're putting 10% down. They're putting 15% down.
Yeah.
You have the stragglers that bought their first house when they were 23 or 24. Now it's like they're selling a house in the peak, not the peak, but like a very, 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 more than they bought their $100,000 starter home for. So they have all this money that I think people don't know that they have, right? It's kind of crazy.
So not the peak.
It's like
we're still climbing.
No, yeah, we're still climbing, not the peak, but you're selling it, much higher than you probably got it in 2014 or whenever they bought their first home.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it right now, just situationally, right? We talked about it. Okay, they're good savers. And then on top of that, you have the pandemic. So they're paying rent someplace. They also, millennials, whatever you want to call it, they're known to, they have kids later. They kind of live their life. They're going to take trips. They're going to do all these things. Well, all of a sudden, that stuff's cut off. You can't take the trips, and you're stuck in your one-bedroom studio apartment doing nothing, right?
And
But
you're like, I really wish I had a backyard now,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Like this, like the
Yes.
current place I live doesn't seem as cool anymore
Yeah.
now that I got to be there for, a year and a
Yeah.
half.
Or, like most people that I know, people that lived in apartments during this and, they have a fiance or they're just freshly married and they're like, holy crap, we're both working jobs in a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, and, tucked into each
Man,
other, right?
that's so
like,
funny.
So now the man's sitting here thinking, it's like, gosh, it would be so great if I had a man cave to like move a desk down into a work-in, right? Like
We
so-
can't even coexist in one room.
How many times I've had that conversation this year of someone that is not going to compromise their office space. Like, no, I need a 4-bedroom. I would like a 5th bedroom. If it's got a basement big enough to put my office. So these elaborate offices are in houses now, and that's part of the home purchase strategy for a lot of, man, that's funny. And I live, so when you're caught in the middle of something, sometimes you're just in the middle of it. But to reflect on that one thing, it's like how many times we've had that conversation of, no, that won't work for an office. This 12 by 12 bedroom is not going to work for an office. Not going to be my bookshelf. It's like, I want an office. Like, knock this, instead of knocking walls out to make rooms bigger, it's like, just blow this out, put big windows so you have your corner office window.
Yeah, and and I couldn't imagine, like, we never ran into that, me and my wife, we never ran into the whole, like, okay, your desk is gonna go here and your desk is gonna go here, and then, like, we've gotta take turns making phone calls. We never really ran into it, but I can imagine, like, if you both have jobs where you gotta be on the phone or a Zoom call, Zooms, gosh, I think I'm zoomed out at this point, but like, you both have Zoom calls at the same time. Like, what are you supposed to do if you're sitting in a studio apartment? So these millennials are like, we saw that, and most companies have not sent people back. They're like, hey, we don't need this big office building anymore. You guys can work from home. So
They'll hire
like,
people from anywhere.
Yeah.
You could
can
be
work
anywhere in the
from
world,
anywhere,
right?
Like I just ran into a couple that they're trying to buy a home. Like they're literally still driving around in an RV and just working their jobs from an RV, and they're like, we realized
That's
having
awesome.
I was like, that's fantastic. They've been to 47 of the 48 states, and like we're hitting our last state, continental states.
They must have really good jobs with gas prices being so high.
Yeah, I'm like, gosh, I can't imagine what driving an RV around would be like. But it'd be, but they're starting to think like, okay, we've seen everything. We're working in this very small space, like an apartment, and like we're now ready to buy a house.
So I was bullied into sharing an office. You've seen it. We've got a traditional, 4-bedroom house, and it came with the dining room. Well, the dining room then became the kids' playroom, which, by the way, I had to take the chandelier down. If you're buying a house with a chandelier and you plan on using that room for something other than the dining room, change the chandelier because
It's not soccer.
yeah. Well, and on top of that, like, I'm not tall, but that chandelier hangs pretty low, so you tend to crack once or twice. You crack your head on it, and you're gonna take the chandelier out. So anyway, that became my office, and I had a nice desk in there, and I got a printer, and and they were even nice enough to give me a chalkboard wall, so just in case I could write down whatever it was I wanted to write down on there, which ended up turning into the kids coming around my desk, which was fine because there was only one desk. Well, then everything hit, and Nicole's working from home, and she would take my desk, and then I would go there, and she said, well, I need a new desk. I've got to fit all my screens and everything on there. And she's on the phone, most of the days on Zooms or conference calls or whatever. And so like I would try to work across from her, like we're sitting right here, and then I'd be on the phone.
And he would just,
and then
beautiful today, honey.
I can't see her because she's got a wall of monitors there. But like I would try to talk on the phone at the same time she's talking on the phone, and then I'd get the look across like, on the phone. I'm like, well, I'm on the phone.
I love you too.
I'm on the phone.
And then it becomes the battle, like whose job's more important, right?
Yeah.
Like whose income do we need
Yeah,
more? Like
like-
who can be on the phone, right?
And I found out, like, you know what?
Well, you read lips. Elephant shoe.
I found out that like I can just basically learn to do my job from a chair in the living room, which is how, remember, we had the show of the week. I was able to multitask shows of the week, my job in front. I'm like, okay, fine. And then to have the audacity to make fun of me because I don't even use my desk anymore.
Well, you got used to it, right?
I got used to it, and it was like every time I was like, shh, shh. I'm like, well, I got to make phone calls too, just not working, right? So, but yeah, so back to the birthing rates, millennials are driving this thing, and we see that this is going to continue to happen for some time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if someone's sitting here thinking if you're in the market to buy a home, you're like, I bet in like 2 years, like it's probably gonna slow down. There's just no end. I mean, there's very, very, very few. I mean, obviously in financial world and stuff like that, if you can find like the tiniest indicator, right? Like, well, this is the same as this, but most indicators point to that there's really no end in sight. I mean, even with interest rates going up, we've not seen any drop in demand as far as people that want to get pre-approved, that want to go out and start shopping. We really haven't seen that drop. I mean, the one indicator that they always kind of fudge, right? Especially compared to like 2020, 2021, they're like, well, mortgage applications are down 60%. It's like, yeah, because there's no houses for these people to buy. We're not doing as many refis now because the interest rates are higher. That's the one indicator that they always like to like cause panic, right? Like all these, no one's applying for mortgages. It's like, well, you're counting the ones that actually make application and they're in contract to buy a home. They don't talk about the 75, 80 people every loan officer has that's pre-approved, ready to buy a house, right? That's not in those. That's not in that stat.
Nobody's applying because they've all applied.
Yeah,
Right.
they've all applied. They have the letter in their hand. They just don't have a place to go. They probably put 5 offers in and just not getting accepted.
Right.
He used to work with a guy, and he would say, "Numbers don't lie. They don't tell the full truth, but they don't lie."
Yeah, and it's like, and you can always find that indicator that proves like the doomsdayer financial analyst that wants to tell everybody that the next 2008 is around the corner, can go find that like one little sliver of like data and then flip it into a CNBC article, and then next thing you know, I'm getting texts from people like, did you see this article? And it's like, a perfect example was 2 weeks ago when they kind of came out and they were like, mortgage applications are down 60%. And I got a text from someone that was pre-approved, and they're like, does this mean like the prices are going to go down? Because if that's the case, like I definitely want to wait now. It's like, no, these are the people that are actually lucky enough to get a house in contract in a house, not the 90, 100 other people.
It's not you.
Yeah,
it's not you.
You're not included in that, that stat. So,
So our media is not completely honest.
Yeah. I mean, go figure, right? You pick a stat out, but then you could probably find on the other side that someone's like maybe a little. I think I'm on the bullish side of things of like thinking like I'm not too bullish, but I do think there's gonna still be that steady rise for some time now. But you could probably find someone that's like housing prices are gonna double over the next 6 months or something like that. You could find a stat that probably shows that, but we know that's probably not the case. But a 5 to 10% raise in the next 2 years is probably not too far fetched, really.
So I follow.
I think it's neat when we comp out a house and our search criteria to grab your house on the market and just kind of do the filters of what the market indicates that house would be.
Your Zestimate.
Your Zestimate.
Yeah.
Your house would be competitive to put on the market, and when you run that first scan of comparable sales in the community and you just hit enter, there's no lying in those stats. I mean, it's just raw. And there's a few times throughout the time that I had the privilege of being an agent, I looked down, I was like, whoa, that's not the number I wanted to see, because it's significantly lower than I want to take to a consumer of like, hey, here's what your house is worth.
Yeah.
And then you can filter those with, well, this garage, this lot, this, and this.
And the next thing you know, you have the value that you want, right? Without even really doing anything.
Yep.
So pulling from 10 comparable sales, which leads your house to be $250. Now I found this one anomaly that says your house is worth $400.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And then it hits the market, and you get $410 for it, or $450. Like it makes zero sense.
Yeah. So the manipulation of stats is we just see a lot, and I'm glad we're having that conversation, because there are a lot of scared people out there concerned with this bubble thing. And my nephew, he sold his house, took the cash, and he was going to stockpile for a little bit, and he's in the financial world, and he called me and says, Quentin, I need to buy because this isn't stopping.
Yeah.
I said, hey, let's go get it now.
Yeah, because you think if you would have bought, like we've been having these discussions, probably you guys as well with clients, like it's so expensive right now. It's like, well, if you said that 2 years ago, well, now that same house, let's just say $300,000, right? You're looking at a house before COVID, $300,000. That house is now worth $350, maybe even more. And now it's not a 2.75, it's now a 5.5, right? Or whatever it might be. So now you're like, that house is exponentially more expensive when you already thought it was expensive 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we're, you know, most of the loan officers in this office here, like, we're trying to preach to people. It's like, look, be patient, find what you want, but you've got to understand the longer this process takes, the more expensive it's going to be. Whether that's interest rates, which hopefully they're kind of finding the plateau, we hope, and then, but just depreciation. You know, that house now is going to be, you know, 5 to 10%, depending on the area, expensive the next year.
So you're telling them to be urgently patient.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously you don't want to have buyer's remorse. No one wants to move into a house that they don't want to buy, right? You're like, oh, I'm buying it just to buy it because I need to buy a house. You don't want to do that, but you definitely, you know, sitting here thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna wait it out. Like I don't think that's a, you know, a financially good goal, right? Like you might be waiting 10 years to buy your first house if that's the case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait a year and then I'm gonna start looking. That's a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
We need the bell for with so many cliches that.
You know, because that same, you know, the next year you're going to be showing them houses and like, why is this $30,000 more than the house that we looked at last year? It's like, because there's appreciation and things like that this is not slowing down. Like, it's not going to stop for you to buy a house, right? So. Well,
it's crazy too. Like you were talking about, like comping a house out, and you know, you can manipulate those numbers however you see fit to kind of make it fit whatever you want it to fit. But what I find interesting is when I'm looking every day at the numbers and what houses actually sell for, as opposed to what they're listed for. And so if you look at this curve that I've been following since the pandemic, since January, homes in our area, I mean, it is a, you can see it. It is a roller coaster ride at the very beginning. It is just, it's that slow moving. So like when I'm comping a house out and you're looking at it and it's like, how much effect when you put a house on the market and it goes over, how much that affects the next agent that's going to comp a house in that area, to where like the house, he may have had the meeting and be like, hey, your house is worth 300. Well, mine just sold for 315 and this house is better. I had this situation in Harrison where it's like looking at it, I'm like this makes a lot of sense, but I'm like, you know, heck, kind of thinking like 290, and then you pull the numbers up and it's like, nope, go up. It's like every single, what is it, Newton's law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? Again, not just a hat rack. Notice how I just pulled that like, right out. I listen and pay attention. So that's
Science,
all. Science, neurology, brain.
A lot of science.
So that's awesome stuff. So thank you for your real estate knowledge. But now let's get into the show. I wish we had some wish I could figure out how to play a little bit of like, yeah. Do. So how was your weekend?
Waynesville. How's your weekend?
Well, I've along with being a millennial, I'm now getting old. I hurt my back. I hurt my back. I didn't know how I hurt my back. You know, I went to the chiropractor. He's like, "How did this happen?" I'm like, "I was living life." And then woke up the next morning and had massive back spasms. Couldn't get off the ground. My wife Danielle had to stay home from work to help me because we had a sick kid as well. And so that was Thursday and Friday, and I finally was able to walk on Saturday. I was able to get out and enjoy the weather a little bit. We had our first softball game, which I watched over FaceTime because I was clung to the couch in pain. But yeah, my oldest Evelyn had her first softball game. It's now coach pitch. So
okay.
All right.
You're actually striking out now and stuff like that. It's a very hard concept for kids to understand when you go from T-ball to that. But she did really well. She loves softball. But yeah, that was my weekend. I mean, I wish I could say it was awesome, but it was a lot of clung to the couch in pain.
Striking out that 8-year-old kid. Go grab some pine, kid.
Yeah.
Next up.
Threw a no-hitter.
Yeah, she came over to the FaceTime when I was watching. And she was like, she's like, I don't understand why I can't just swing until I hit. And I'm like, well, there's strikes and, there's winning and losing. Like, we've talked about this. And she was just like, but I want to hit.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, well, I get that. But
Just wait, because I'm going to go down that rabbit hole here in a few minutes,
You get
too.
the scorebook out like, no, that shortstop booted that ball. My no-hitter's
Yeah.
still intact.
Yes, that's right.
You strike out enough, you may have a spot on the Reds.
So my statement, and you would, you would also probably agree with this. So at some point, she's going to get into kids pitch, right? Do they have in softball like a coach pitch? Do they like go 3 innings? Do they do it like an hour? What is their?
So I guess they do like if they can get 2 outs is kind of where they're at now. If they can get 2 outs, or if they go through the lineup is kind of how they're doing.
So
it
just
right now.
one time through the lineup?
Yeah, one time through the lineup. Like that's the max amount you can do in an inning if they don't get 2 outs. But if they get 2 outs, like they pull them off the field and like.
But how long is a game? So like I know when my kids were doing it, it was like they might go through the lineup 3 times, or it would be like.
So
3, 4, 5 innings or an hour.
It was like I think it ended up being 3 innings, which ended up being like about an hour and a half.
Okay. Because this is where I'm going with this.
It's
Just wait.
Slow.
That last kid to
Like
line
I
up,
was
'cause they-
at that point, I was very happy that I was on the other side of the phone, like at FaceTime, like okay, I don't like struggle through 3 innings, an hour and a half, of coach pitch softball.
So wait till she gets to kid pitch, because that'll take that hour and a half game and turn it into a fresh 3 hours.
Yeah, so softball is a little different. Baseball, I know I went to some youth baseball and they lasted 3 hours. Softball's always had the time restrictions on it, so you're there for an hour and 10, hour and 20. So, and it's they shut it down after that.
Nothing like a 2.5 hour D1 baseball game.
Yeah, no, you won't see that in the softball world. So
That's it. That's good news for you.
Yeah, I was like,
it's all time slotted.
I was like,
And
not a
you
big
stick
fan
with
of softball, but I can do that.
I can
Right,
get
yeah.
behind a good time limit, if need be, when you're talking about the kid. If the kids were wearing watches, they'd get their steps in for sure, because it's all they're doing is just walking.
And that last kid, because we grew up, when my daughter was coming through the pipeline, it was the last kid in the lineup. They knew that it was it, right? You just
Yeah.
get through the lineup.
Keep running.
You're the last one, just keep running.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
everybody
I
wanted
know.
the last at
Yeah.
bat. Now I don't want to be last.
It's like I
at
hit
bat,
10 home runs this
D-
year.
d- yeah.
Just keep going. Yeah.
All I do is hit dingers, right?
Yeah.
Throw the ball, first baseman misses it.
Hey Tom, I bet his daughter doesn't cry like our boys.
Yeah, I know, Mike. We're gonna get into that too when we talk about it. I've got some interesting takes. I'm glad that he kind of is gonna segue into that. But
Yeah, girls are not whiners, man. They're not. I mean, they will cry in the dugout at themselves for their performances and things that they do, but they're not whining to umps. It's having the daughters going through that process and being around the fast pitch world for as long as I have. Girls aren't. They're not whiners to the umps and to calls and stuff like that. It is a completely different culture when it comes to that, and I'm glad I'm removed from that, because I'll go after our game. Sometimes we'll go watch the varsity baseball or JV baseball,
Mhm.
and the body language, it's just like
Every time
some of the girls are like, oh my god, I can't stand watching
yeah,
the behaviors of the whininess and the calls and the moodiness, and girls when they strike out, they will jog to the dugout, and baseball guys are like, are you kidding me? I'd never do that. It's like, well, you struck out, get off the field.
Yeah,
It's like,
next.
what do you?
Yeah, we're not trying to be here for 4
Let's-
hours. Like,
let's
get
go.
out of here.
Temper tantrum, drag your bat across
Yeah.
the field, look at the eyeball, just get off the field.
hustle, people,
Yeah.
hustle.
Yeah, that is something that grateful that the fast pitch world does not give that. It's just not part of the sport.
And I promise you, when we get to what I have, this was you started this and you're brand new to the show, and then you followed it up, and I'm gonna hit it out of the park, because it was crazy synchronicities, right? That this is exactly where I was gonna go. Yeah, where I was gonna go with it. So anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But Paige was at Dayton this
Yep.
weekend, so
Yep.
that had to be
Yeah, it was
simple.
Awesome. It was awesome. Nice hour ride to finally watch her play, and it was a lot of fun. Family dinner, hanging out, catching up. Everybody was there, so we put the family photo on Facebook, and a lot of thumbs up and hearts and beautiful family comments. So thanks everyone for that. And yeah, it was neat for everyone to come up and see her, because her travel ball schedule was so demanding that even when she was playing locally for a local team. We were never local. So it was tough for my mom to see her. It's tough for Jessica's mom to see her, and any other family. It's, when her schedule is Chattanooga or Los Angeles or Chicago or Orlando. We never played within 4 hours. So, a lot of people never really got to see her play. And when she was playing in Dayton, we had a great turnout for a lot of family members to go up and finally see her play at the collegiate level for the first time, or the first time in 7 or 8 years because of how demanding her schedule was. So it was awesome, man. It was awesome.
So how'd she do?
She's had better weekends, but she's still top 5 in the conference in on-base percentage. She's still 320 something batting average, I think. She had a tough weekend, and it's, I had one of the friends that were there. It's like, this is probably hard for her wanting to perform for the family. I said, I don't, knowing her as with the relationship we have, which is, a special relationship. I said, I think she's just looking over the shoulder and out of the dugout. Like, I just want to go talk to them. Yeah. Like, she didn't feel the pressure of, oh no, I need to hit for anyone. It was just seeing everybody out there they haven't seen. And, she saw Grace, the middle daughter. Grace showed up and Paige greeted her with a big hug. I haven't seen you in 4 months. Yeah. So, I live firmly that you cannot serve multiple gods, and her focus should have been hitting, but it easily distraction of, hey, I miss my family. Haven't seen grandma since Christmas time. Haven't seen, oh my gosh, mom's best friend Bobby. I haven't seen her in a couple years. So it's kind of the distraction of what's going on around you, and she had good quality at bats, but it didn't go the way we were expecting. Yeah. Or her, so she was a little down on herself, but we don't care about that. We got to see her.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Hug her, and have a great dinner with her, and I can see her next Wednesday down in Fairfax, Virginia, for the A10 tournament. So
that was my next question. They've got
Dayton, her travel ball team. 4 kids from her travel ball team played for Dayton, so there was
a lot of friendships there.
You name it. It was a perfect storm of just distractions.
Yeah.
So her head's going to be back in the right place this week. And I have no doubt that she's going to get back on base. And again, after a tough weekend, she's still top 5 in the conference with on-base percentage, and she's still doing her thing.
So A10 tournaments next weekend, and then that's it, right?
Yeah, Wednesday. So I'm driving out Wednesday, and it's funny because I'm driving out potentially with a couple Dayton dads to watch them play, because they're pretty much in the position to make the tournament as well.
I was gonna say, how does that work? Is softball kind of like basketball, where you automatic qualify out of the conference tournament?
So there's 9 teams in the A10, 6 of them qualify.
Okay.
So top 6 go. So obviously 3 are going to stay home.
Yeah.
And then it's top 2 get a bye.
Okay.
And then everybody else just beats each other up. And top 2.
And as far as the NCAA tournament, is it like an automatic bid out of the conference tournament?
A10. You got to win it.
You got to win it
to get in. So, and it's looking like George Washington is kind of the head of the class. They got some good depth, but in our conference, every team has a legitimate ace. So who knows?
You never know
what's going to happen.
And softball is different, and the girl could literally pitch the whole tournament, correct? Kind of.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So if our pitching staff, shady start. I'll be completely honest, but they're all starting to get in their groove now, and our number 1 is really dialed in, so we can come out and upset somebody.
Easily.
Go back to the hotel, get a good night's sleep. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You looked great yesterday.
Yeah.
Great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's, she could pitch 3 consecutive days. And if she's as dialed in as she has been, I was telling Paige, because I'm flying up Saturday morning to pick Paige up for the year. And it's like, your number 1 might mess up my plans.
Yeah,
she might cost me a lot of money. Because I'm going to have to go up and do nothing for Saturday, because they're still in Virginia, and I'm gonna have to book a hotel that night, and it's like, I only booked a 1-way flight. Yeah, I gotta get home. What's going on?
And then guess what? If they win it, they're going to the regional somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good problem to have, but an expensive good problem to have.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, man, and good catching up. And
now, did you guys get a hotel in Dayton?
So UD softball field. And the parking lot is connected to a hotel.
Okay.
So the team stayed in that hotel, and we stayed in that hotel. So, and they got a 10 o'clock curfew, so Paige was in our room until about 9:45. Yeah. Instead of driving home and driving back, it was, we got that extra time in with her. And It was cool. And we literally left the hotel and walked across the parking lot to the softball field.
That's not bad.
That's beautiful.
That's not bad. Good for tailgating too, right? Yeah.
Softball's a big tailgating scene.
It should be.
It should be.
You
Every
can
sport
tailgate
should
for
be.
anything.
Yeah, you really can.
And
Yeah.
UD's complex, I was pleasantly surprised with the way it lays out. They got a great crowd there. I mean, it was a good turnout. And when we first got there and I was in the stands, I was looking out and it looked like a pretty steep hill in the outfield. And I started seeing people set up lawn chairs, and I'm like, man, that's a steep hill. So, and some of our family went out there, and I walked out, and it is a decent hill, but it lays out much flatter than I expected, and it was
Perfect
packed
spot.
in the outfield. Yeah, perfect spot where it's laid out, and nice field, nice facilities.
Some of the funnest games that I ever played in. So we had dorms, but like we didn't have a field, so we had to play. We had to borrow somebody else's field. Whether it was when I played, it was Midland, so we would drive to Midland. That was our field, but there was no student life there. But some of the funnest games that we played were when we went to places that had student life, whether it was a fraternities or whatever, and it was they would come to the game. So there was a place, it was DePaul with a W in Indiana, and they had a dead-end street that was all frat houses. And then there was a hill, and then the fence was at the center field fence was at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
So we show up to play, and they're out there. Like our games probably started at noon, and we get there 9 o'clock or whatever, and they were already in the cul-de-sac. They're out there, they're partying, and they've got loud music playing, and they're watching the game, and they're announcing the game. So like they had their programs, so they knew everybody that was coming up.
Yeah.
And they got information on some people that I have no idea how they had information on. And so my one buddy, he played center field, and they were lighting him up, just lighting him up. And every time he came to bat, they played a song. I can't think of the name of the song. I wish we had Alexa, but they played a song by Dido. And so they kept calling him Dido every time he would go to center field. And so like it's the middle of the game, and the dude's getting ready to throw a pitch. We're on defense. And you just hear, and you look over, and there are 3 dudes rolling down this hill, just crashing into the fence. And like, it was hilarious. But like, you talk about distractions.
Yeah,
like you're
yeah.
like, what in the world? Where are we?
Buffalo
Like, are they going to
Yeah.
jump the fence?
Yeah.
Like, what are, yeah.
And they're just laughing, having a great time, playing loud music. And then there was another one, which is closer, Hanover. They were the worst. By worst, I mean the best. Because they would actually sit in the stands, and they had the stands right behind home plate. And when the coach took a mound visit, they were calling out his steps. So it would be like grass, grass, gravel, 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 dirt, 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 mound. And then he'd walk back. And I remember I kicked the ball playing short, and like they'd let me have it the entire warming up. If I caught it, they were standing up and cheering, the old bronze cheer. If I threw it away, you suck, blah, blah. Oh, hated it at the moment, but looking back, it was so much fun.
Yeah, that's
It was
awesome.
so much
I
fun.
love
that
fan
environment's good.
So do I. I'm a huge fan of heckling.
I'm considered by my friends a world class heckler.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a clean one. I've never been kicked out of a game, but I remember at baseball, it was the Reds made the playoffs. Like they already clinched. It was like one of those like late September night games, and my friend's like, man, these like $5 tickets on the left field wall. Well, you remember Braun got caught with the PEDs.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. We were just back there letting them have it. Like never got kicked out because like you'll get kicked out if you get
Oh yeah.
aggressive or whatever. But yeah, I don't consider myself a world class heckler. I think I'm pretty good at it, but like my first, I remember just being back. It was like the best Reds game I'd ever gone to, and there was nobody because they'd already clinched. Like everybody's like, I'm gonna save my money for the playoffs, and we were just back there. It was in baseball. I think is one of the most fun sports to heckle people.
Oh, and you can hear everything.
Oh, everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when there's no one in the stands. Like
Yeah.
you can hear everything that's being said, and at a certain point, if you hit the right chord, right?
So speaking of right chord, I was much younger. It's probably been 15 plus years. Buddy of mine from high school, he got tickets right behind the dugout, and then we got free passes into the clubs. We're like, yeah, it was a day game. We're like, yeah, let's do it. So it was like me and 3 of my other high school friends. Like, we're gonna go to the game. So we go to the game. Well, first we had to go tailgate, so we went somewhere, got primed up there, right? We get to our seats. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Well, it started drizzling a little bit, and the people in front of us,
Gone.
they left. So I was like, okay, now we're in the first row behind the dugout. Well, all of a sudden, and you might remember this game, it was Paul Wilson was pitching for the Reds. It was a close game. The Reds were terrible at the time. Kyle Farnsworth was on the mound
Oh, gosh.
for the Cubs. Wilson, there was already some talking back and
Is that the
forth.
fight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Wilson
do remember
Wilson
that.
batted.
Farnsworth like a linebacker.
Farnsworth hit him. Wilson charges the mound, and he gives him like a big old Alabama spine buster, like right there, and we're in the front row. All this is happening
Awesome.
right in front of us, and like we're yelling and screaming. And next, in like I remember the bullpen. They're coming down from right field, the Cubs bullpen, and like, we had probably had a few pops, and I started yelling at the bullpen catcher, and I didn't think he could hear me. And I'm like, "Oh, you're just a bullpen," which I would love to be a bullpen catcher, but I'm.
It's like you're just a backup.
Yeah,
quarterback in the
yeah,
NFL. It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
You're a
I am,
nobody.
right, like,
You're a nobody.
Yeah,
It's better than yours.
Yeah,
I'm
about
like-
0.1% of athletes, right? Or
And
whatever, 0.01%.
Apparently, when you call the backup catcher a backup catcher in a tone that maybe is a little bit louder than it should be, and when he perked up and he looked right at me, I felt like it might as well have been Hulk Hogan pointing at me from the other end. I'm like, oh, it's like, oh shit, like, nope, that was him. It was him. And like it was like watching the fight and everything go on, like right there. I'm like,
everybody's on edge. Like,
Yeah,
he might
yeah,
like the
not
mouse
the
at the Palace at the Red Stadium.
yes,
right?
exactly,
Like, these guys
exactly.
Come up and start throwing punches.
Yeah, meta world peace, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. You had a good weekend. You got to see her.
Yeah.
So good luck to her next week in that conference tournament. That's a blast. It's a blast. Anytime you can be in that competitive environment, and I think the biggest thing from that is just relax. It's no different than any other game, And honestly, when you go into it, not with the mind, I don't want to say with the mindset that you're not going to win, but when you're loose to the point of just, hey, we're going to be up here, we're going to give it the best we got.
Had bigger at bats than this.
You got it.
Yep.
You got it. Because we did it. We won our conference tournament when we were like, hey, we're ready for the season to be over. Oh, shoot, we just won the conference tournament.
Yeah.
Then we go to the regional. It's like, well, we'll be home. Because it's funny because you were talking about ruining, so Nicole had tickets to, it was a mega country concert at Riverfront, going way back, Riverfront Stadium. And it had Tim McGraw, George Strait, Kenny Chesney, Faith Hill, it was a huge country festival. I'm like, that is awesome. I want to go to it. So for my birthday, which is in April, she bought tickets. Well, we didn't think we'd be playing in the regional. Well, we're in the regional. I'm like, started on Wednesday. Like, the concert was, I think, Sunday night. Like, we'll be home. Don't worry.
JK.
Yeah, we make it all the way to basically the if game, right? So we had rolled through, got to beat the team that we needed to beat the first time, and then had to play in the second time. Had we just lost that first game, I'd have made the concert. But because we won, now it's like, all right, well, I guess we're going to – and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we're going to go to the College World Series. We just beat them. Let's go do it again. And then we got our butts kicked.
Yeah,
and it's
as
like
soon as you cared, right?
yeah, it's like we got our butts kicked, and I'm not going to the concert. This is freaking terrible.
Yeah, this is worse.
Yeah.
Worse than all the worlds.
It doesn't matter. It matters.
It matters now. Shit.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that was a ton of fun. She'll have a blast. I know she will. Especially I say that because I know last year they played, but with everything that was kind of going on, wasn't the same. Whereas this year is
More normal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, my weekend was interesting. So we had Friday night, 3 kids playing at 3 different places at the exact same time. Yeah. So
Good scheduling.
yeah, right. And so Austin had a tournament in Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Whoa.
Yeah. Blake had a coach pitch game in Covedale. And then Carson was playing Princeton at 7 o'clock at Princeton. So Grandpa goes to Princeton. Mom goes to coach pitch. I go to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Okay. So, and I'm getting updates, and I'm getting updates from Blake, and Blake's hitting bombs, and Dad's sending me updates from
Mom, give me the phone.
my dad's sending me texts about how Carson was doing. And it's like, okay, and then we were playing Austin's team Friday night. We go down there under the lights.
So is Austin's teammates bummed that they didn't get to see Blake play?
Not this time they didn't, but I digress. So we go Friday night, have a great time. Play the game, we win, played good baseball, come back to the hotel, kids got pizza, they're swimming, they're making memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Saturday we had to play at 10 o'clock. So we get there, we played good baseball, we just lost. We lost 8-6 to a good team, no big deal. But they had this plan, these 12-year-old kids, they had this plan the whole time that, you know how you see athletes, like football players or whatever, when they get off the bus and they're dressed to impress.
Yeah. I saw the pictures, yeah.
I was
So
wondering what those pictures were. I was like, kind of cool, but I didn't know the story behind
so
it.
yeah, so they came up with this idea that they were all, and this they came up with, of course, like a week beforehand.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna get a jacket now.
Yeah, it's like blue, like let's all wear suits. And so they all, like, one kid came up with a blue suit, and everybody's like, mom's like, where'd you get that? And it's like, you buy these $20 suits off of Amazon, And so we get back from the game, and then the moms that were there, they made the plans, like, okay, go get your suits on. You're gonna bring these suits. You're gonna wear them all day long. Like, they went out and bought corsages. The kids are getting their pictures, and then we went to this pizza restaurant there, and it was probably that and the Texas Roadhouse were the two big restaurants kind of in the hotel circle. So, like, there's other teams that had played, and they're sitting in there, and, like, our guys walk in, and some of them three-piece blue $20 suits, walking in, and heads are turning, and they're looking good, and it took, when you go to a restaurant and you have a big party like we had, like, it takes a while to get your stuff, right? Whether it's a drink, whether it's food, whatever. So it took all about 10 minutes before they were out in the parking lot in their suits, throwing football, jumping around, everything.
Holes in the pants and all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff.
And so, but the looks that we got, and they're sitting there, like, it was classic. It's stuff that, regardless of any of the games, they'll remember that for a lifetime, right?
Yes.
And so then we had to play on Sunday, and we played pretty decent team on Sunday. We come out, gangbusters, through our first game. At 12 years old, the bases are 70 feet. You really don't see kids get thrown out stealing. So first guy gets on, next pitch he steals, we throw him out. I'm like, whoa, all right. And then get the next two guys out. We come out, boom, 4 runs. And this is where I go with what I was going to get to before.
Yep.
So we then proceeded to, and this has nothing to do with baseball. It has everything to do with, one, the generation, the mentality, everything about it, where, like, they lost their ever-loving minds on each other, to whereas they were brothers over here when they're off the field, and then they get on the field and one person screws up, and they want to, what do you do? It's like, and it just kind of transpired to,
You talking about your team?
yes, and it
Okay.
transpired into a complete and total meltdown by not just one, not just two, but probably like 5 or 6 different kids throughout the
Just a snowball.
the game.
Yeah.
And it was, we ended up losing the game, but the hardest part is, like, we were all so mad because it was embarrassing. The way that they behaved towards each other, towards umpires, some towards coaches, some towards parents, and, like, it was one of those things where it was like, you're left scratching your head, and understand they're 12 years old, they're kids. Okay,
Sure.
so but as coaches, you're like, man, I don't know what to say to them because I'm so angry. Now, again, our team's been together for about 6 weeks. Okay. So they're still all relatively new to each other, but they love each other so much when they're hanging out and doing all that stuff that there's apparently some type of comfort zone,
Yeah.
where it's like they feel that they can do that. And
Yeah.
and that's just never been ingrained in me. You want to have class, you want to have character first, character and class before anything. I don't care if you win or lose. If you don't win another game the rest of the year, you're going to do it with character, you're going to do it with class. And so, like, we leave, and I told Austin before that game even, I was like, hey, and when we leave today, don't let me forget to get you a T-shirt for the tournament. So when we had our talk with the team, and I'm like, of course, I parked like a mile down the road and had to walk.
T-shirt.
So much.
Pacifier.
No, I didn't even it didn't even hit me till like until I got home that night. Like, oh shoot, we forgot a T-shirt. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, and like we went like probably an hour ride because it's a 2.5 hour drive or so to Elizabethtown. We went probably an hour and like it was complete silence, no radio, no nothing. Just like he didn't want to hear what I had to say, and I wasn't gonna listen to a daggone thing he had to say.
Right.
And like and finally it was just kind of like what do you think? Not good. Now they did 12-year-old kids. I'm like kind of going in the spiel. Well, it really ate me up.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing just not like because the kids are great. They are great. They have a blast together. Like
Get caught off guard, man.
Like it was, and it was the first time, and I've coached now 23 years, all different age groups. It's the first time on a field I've ever been speechless.
Yeah.
And so it happens, and I'm like I was ate up with it like that night, and I'm like, and I don't know the other guys that I'm getting to know the other guys that I'm coaching with. So it's like you don't know. I don't know them well enough to where it's like I really can picture kind of what their reaction is. So you're kind of wondering like, did they see the same thing I did? Are they in panic mode? Like I'm not in panic mode, but I'm sitting here like, man, like, but I didn't want to pick up the phone because I didn't want them to see like I was in panic mode either.
Yeah.
And so I'm out cutting my grass, and like I do some of my best thinking when I'm cutting my grass. I put great lineups together when I'm cutting my grass.
Grass and shower, right?
That's it.
Shower.
And so, like, I'm out there and I've got my AirPods in, and I get a call. It was from the head coach, and we started talking. Like, man, I am so glad that you called. Like, just it was a giant weight lifted off of me because I was like, I hope I'm not the only one that feels this way. And then to find out that I wasn't the only one that felt this way, and we were all in agreement and all on the same page. But like, it turned to, as I'm cutting grass, like, I took one psychology class in college. I'm like, okay, can I remember anything in regards to
Doctor told
What
me.
kind
middle
tricks?
school kids,
Yeah.
teenagers? Like, how can you teach them? Because for me, again, it's about character, it's about class. How can you teach them first and foremost, before anything else, to be good teammates, regardless of the scores?
Yeah.
And I really struggled with trying to count because I'm a process guy. Like, what is the process to make 12? Google it. What is the process to make 12-year-olds good teammates?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is conversation we had about how baseball and softball are such a direct reflection of life, that how much control you have. When I'm the fifth guy in the lineup and the number 2 hitter's going, you've got to cheer for that guy.
Right.
Where's our mind when that kid's up to bat? And we can't dictate who's up to bat when the game is on the line.
Yeah.
So when it's a one-run game and there's somebody up to bat to try to win that game for you, this dugout's going crazy. And they all relate to that exact emotion.
Yeah.
So, okay, we need to go there mentally and know the value of that kid in a situation that we need that kid. And that switch can never be turned off. Like, we have to identify that when a ball's hit to our left fielder, we love that guy.
Yeah.
He's the favorite guy on the team,
Yeah.
right? And that should never, ever change because we can't predict in that sport where the ball's going or who's going to come up in the lineup or who's going to get the outer. So when we're turned on for that player and encouraging that player because we need that player to hit so we can win the game, we can never turn that switch off. And if we can go there mentally, I think that helps. And where you're at, we had a similar this team. I love my team this year, the softball team at West Claremont, but I want to get their mindsets into backyard ball as much as I can. No coaches involved, no parents involved. So I shared the story where we just went in and we played fence ball. I just hit it a certain height, it's an out, so everybody keep line drives low. And me and the coaches, we just stood and girls go play, right? Just play. Here's the rules. Go have fun.
Yeah.
There was trash talking. There was chirping. Me and the coaches were talking like I had never seen them in this element. But keep playing. We didn't correct anything. We didn't harp on it. We just let it play out. And as soon as practice was over, it was like, girls, we just learned a lot about you guys. And we don't like it, and we'll never see it again.
Yeah.
We're fixing this right here and right now, and I'm not afraid to have that tough conversation with you because that was absolute classless.
Yeah.
These are your teammates.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk to the people that you need to support you the most. You're going to talk to them like that and show them up like that. never again.
Right.
This is your team, and the way you responded to certain things, and like I did not know you guys were such babies.
Right.
Like, do you need us to constantly monitor you? Do you need parents to constantly watch you to keep you on your best behavior? And they were like, no. I'm like, well, that's your commitment to each other. That will never happen again. And you know, it was a great experience because it's never happened again. It's like, oh, there is an expectation to backyard ball, which I don't know that kids get a lot of anymore.
No.
So-
Just no coaching, no
No.
parents. They just go play in a field by
No,
themselves.
I don't. That doesn't
with no
happen
supervision.
often. Yeah.
Like, I don't know that happens
'Cause
a lot. So
every-
they're in an element of like, I don't know that I've ever been here before.
Right.
How do I
Sports is
act?
all structured now. I mean, there's
Yeah.
and it's a commitment. Like they
Oh, it's a
don't have-
giant
It's
commitment.
like it's not like you have a Saturday evening because you were out of town. It's like it's not like you had a Saturday evening to go out back and like play wiffle ball with 6 kids in the neighborhood. Like it's so structured now that it's like you don't have that time to go do that, right? Like
Right.
you just don't have it anymore.
I'm a big proponent of play. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of that. And our kids typically don't. They haven't, at least over the last 3 weeks or so, had the issue of being able to play. But it's one of those things. Again, keep in mind they're 12, so I'm not sitting here trying to dog on any of them. It is.
Yeah.
It's human nature, and we've all been
Yes.
there. Whether it's whether you're playing basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is you're playing, and you have a teammate, and they make a mistake, and then but in your head you might be, oh, idiot.
Yeah, I remember being that age. How pissed off I'd be at friends at 13, 14 years old.
Yeah,
dude.
but it's
Give him the ball. Do not crush it.
yeah,
Right?
but it's like
Let him go. Let him go for a layup. I'm gonna
Yeah.
foul him hard. I'm so
Yeah.
mad, right?
But it goes back
Wait
to
a minute.
that rule though. Like if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So like instead of word vomit and vomiting out, like catch the ball or come on. Like instead of doing that, like don't say anything. Well, how do you graduate to the point of like, no, dude, don't worry about it. You'll get the next one.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we're trying to instill and trying to teach now is okay. Here's where we were. We're not doing that again, right? Because
Right.
your character comes out a lot of times at your weakest moment.
Yeah.
Your real character comes out at your weakest moment. So
Yeah.
if this is our weakest moment and this is the character that we have, we need to stop focusing so much on baseball. Maybe we need to focus more on who we are as individuals and who we are character-wise to become a better team, to become a better we. Because all you hear is, I can't hit. I suck. I did this. Or, you suck. Or, you can't hit. Or, catch the ball. Or, it's like the
Yeah.
whining and the bitching. And I'm just like, I can't
Yeah.
I can't even focus on the actual baseball game itself because of that. And it's
That's all you hear.
yeah,
Exactly.
and it's like, what in the world happened to 12-year-old kids? So we're going to be having conversations and figuring out a way, first and foremost, to be good teammates. If I want,
regardless of winning. or losing.
regardless,
Yeah.
I want, if my second baseman makes an error, I want the pitcher to look at him and say, get your head up. I want him to hit it to you again. I want the second baseman that made that error to look at the pitcher and go, hey, that's my bad. Have him hit it to me again. I want the guy that strikes out. I want him coming back into the dugout and rooting for the next guy that's up, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And again, it's a newer team, newer together, but it's not impossible. But that was my weekend, and I got back and Nicole was like, hey, we're at Hobner. I'm like, yes. And I had to pee. I'm like 30 minutes from Hobner. I'm like, yeah, 30 minutes. Be there in 30 minutes. Like, get me a beer, blah, blah, blah. Austin's like, okay, great.
Austin got you the beer?
He should buy my beer after that.
Yeah.
But then she's like, well, we're leaving Hobner. I'm like, no. It was like the closest place for me to get to, like, pee. I'm like,
Yeah.
crap.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I'm like, stay there. I'm like, no, we're going to go to Quaker Steak. I'm like, oh, man, that's another 20 minutes. Like, we get there, whatever we eat. And it's like, man, I just trying to, like, I just couldn't get it out. Like, it literally took, like, it's still on my head, on my mind. Like, it
Yeah.
took so long. It just, it ate me up.
So we got a little activity going with our team, and it started 4 weeks ago. And kind of a moment of, we all went out, a game got rained out, we went to Skyline, and I was just kind of, I'm a big guy on gratitude, and I'm looking at the girls just Skyline, hanging out, and I'm like, man, what a great group of kids, looking at the coaches and conversations, and it was just a moment of gratitude, and the thought popped in my head, like, what are those kids grateful for? Like, what,
Yeah.
just give me, So I requested that they write a letter over the weekend, write a name at the top of the paper, who you're grateful for and why. And 100% compliance, everybody turned in the letter. I said, for my eyes only, so what if you want one sentence or an entire page, I don't care. I just kind of want your mind to shift to the people in your life. So I'm reading all these letters, and it was really, really good content. And the girls liked it. It was, thanks, coach, that was neat to do. And we talked about the emotion of writing the letter and how it felt to just think about those people in your life. And they were like, yeah, it felt really cool to stop life and think about it. And I said, all right, so I talked to our baseball coach, and we were having the conversation. And he said, yeah, I've actually had my players write a letter to Pressure, as if Pressure was a person. Like, dear Pressure. So I was like, that's awesome. So I go back to my girls and say, hey, write a letter to Pressure as if Pressure was a person. Same thing, rule apply. Everybody comes in Monday, and the excitement of turning that letter in was like, that was really fun to think about. And some girls were like, you made me think, coach.
Yeah.
And I'm reading these letters, and it was like love-hate relationship, the best and the worst. But almost every one of them, it trended to thank you, Pressure. Thank you, Pressure, for playing a role in my life. Because of you, I am who I am, and I understand that. And then the next week was Dear Commitment. So they had to write a letter to their commitment.
That's pretty cool.
And then the weekend that just got over, they wrote a letter to things that I can control in my life, answer that, and then how do I control that thing?
Yeah.
And again, their compliance on it, and I'm starting to see the verbiage of it of, thanks, coach, for making me think of this. And after every week, it's talked to the girls. It's like, what was it like to mentally go there? And one of the girls were like, I felt like an adult, like thinking of big things in life, and it feels really cool. Some of them, it was kind of funny. It's like, I never realized how many commitments I have until I had to stop and think about it.
Yeah.
And one, I wanted to hug her. She was like, I realized that I'm probably not as committed as I thought I was. It's like, that's an honest answer.
That's deep.
Like, that's
some
big.
self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the 12-year-old kids, I think they could comprehend those topics. And like, I want letters from you guys on what you think teammates, because we had that conversation as a team. Like, from a relationship standpoint, what do you expect from your friends? You know, honesty, loyalty, fun, just, you know, dependable. What do you expect from your significant other? What do you expect from a parent? What do you expect from a school teacher? What do you expect from a boss and a coworker? And we'd go, and it was good energy in the room with like what we all expect from other people in our life. And then I giggled and I said, what do you expect from a teammate? Dude, it's straight silence. I was like, whoa, where'd the energy go? And one girl, she said, Coach, I think we don't have the qualities, so we're shy to say it out loud because we don't bring those. I was like, I think you just hit a home run.
Yeah.
Because we're in
Like
front of those people that we have to answer that specific question to.
I actually like that.
It
might be used.
It was awesome. But again, you just follow that
it's
conversation.
It's like one of those things you don't think about. Like, you don't think about pressure. You don't think about your commitment until you're in the moment,
100%.
right?
100%.
It's like, it's one of those things that you don't think about. Like, I guess some of the greatest athletes, they do.
Yeah.
But most normal people are not like, they don't think like, what am I going to do under pressure?
Yep.
Until you're in it, right?
I had a girl
Until it's like, oh gosh, I'm, here I am, looking at square in the eyes, right?
Yeah, I had a girl make a decision. So the week of the pressure letter, she made a decision in school, and I got wind of it. And I sent her a text and said, hey, I want to talk to you at practice. She's like, am I in trouble? I said, well, that's to be determined. We'll talk at practice. So for the rest of the day, she was coming, and I said, and I addressed it immediately of, did you feel a little pressure today? Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, did you think about the letter you wrote about pressure? So mental muscle memory is the same as like getting batting reps or getting throwing, and just develop that mental. You know what? I just talked about pressure, and now I feel pressure.
Yeah.
What is this pressure going to do for my life? And I'm so glad, because again, what can I control? I can control my body language.
Yep.
Okay, then why did you get mad when you just booted the ball?
Yeah,
like if you can really control that, you would never be in a bad mood.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah,
like if you could choose happy
the
or not,
happiest person in the
you're
world,
going
right?
to choose happy 10 out of 10 times. So what do you think you really control?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, no, coach, you're right. It's like, isn't it funny that a couple plays didn't go your way and you got a little upset at yourself? And we specifically just talked about what you think you can control. It's like, still love you, kid.
Yeah.
Keep working hard. And these are progressions in life that you're inevitably going to take. and to control that thing you think you can control, it's you're going to be put in a position to have to control it.
Yep.
And it's life reps. We had a girl in the game yesterday, runner on second and third. We're down by one, and she struck out. And it's, us sitting in our chairs now in life on this side of those things that we've all been
Experience
through.
done.
She
Yep.
cries. She breaks down to a knee and a chip up, and everybody's like, "Hey, it's okay. Keep your head up. Keep your chin up." And I was like, "That hurts, don't it?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Yeah." And that's a raw, honest
Yeah.
conversation. It hurts to do that, but hey, you need that hurt in life, because remember when you first took the bat, you looked right in my eyes, said you were nervous and scared. You need to go into life
Yep.
situations nervous and scared. You need to feel the hurt of not coming through, because
Or
that
letting someone down. I
ultimately.
always feel the feeling of letting someone down.
Remember writing that letter on pressure? Bam! Oh, and it's bringing sports and life and hybriding them together. It's, to me as a coach, that's such an important thing. So it's neat to do that homework and then be able to address it.
Yeah,
real time.
and immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is all going to be used later on. Yep, it's good stuff. Great stuff. Speaking of great stuff, this past week we had the NFL draft. I'm a huge fan of the NFL draft. It's
They
on.
have 11 safeties.
One of the best
On
sporting,
defense.
non-sporting events, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a sporting event. They're talking about names and pulling names and picking people, right?
That has not played one single down
Not a
of
single
football
down.
in the NFL.
And probably has more of a chance of being a bust than a star, right?
Yeah.
Even the
Isn't that it?
even the people that they're like, this is a no-brainer, right? It's like, well, there's only so many Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's
Right.
and Joe Burrows now.
Achilles
it's kinda-
Smith.
Achilles
Yeah.
Smith.
There's
There's
way
a lot
more of
Achilles
those.
Smiths in the
Jimmy
world than
Kimmler.
there is, your Joe Burrows, your Tom Brady's. There's way more Achilles Smiths.
So
100%.
going
See
through.
Marcus Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, the
Ryan.
no-brainer.
Yeah,
Ryan Leaf.
Ryan Leaf. Yeah.
Could go on and on. And
Yeah.
Tim
What was his
Tim
rant in the
Couch.
locker room? He's about to fight the guy.
Yeah. Leave me alone. All right.
That did kind of sound like it.
It went on.
Practice that?
Yeah. I've heard it before. So-
call me Chris Hubbard again.
Right. I saw that replay of that. That's
such-
freaking
Jim Rome,
hilarious.
that video for Jim Rome, it was incredible.
Sent his career to the moon.
Absolutely did. Yes.
Literally, because he was in
Rolled over
Space
Rivera,
Jam 1.
Can I do it?
What's
Yeah.
that? I didn't even know he was
Yeah.
in Space Jam 1.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yep.
Dad joke, bad.
So it happens in Vegas, and like it's already on NFL Network. They've got their analysts, and then it's on ESPN, and they've got their analysts, and you throw that right in the middle.
The greatest city in the world.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
That's just an
right.
unbiased
The
opinion.
greatest showman city in the world. Like,
Sin City.
yes, and like the stage is at the Bellagio fountain. So I'm like, I'm watching this thing all day, and the draft hasn't started yet, but they're going through highlight videos, and they're outside. And outside there was winds that were blowing 30 to 40 miles an hour.
Which actually happens a lot more than people would think. In Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, it's the desert. It's
But
flat.
they
But
were
for the
worried
most
about
part, it's
the
flat.
draft taking place outside.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so the NFL, of course, they had a contingency plan because they bought the entire city
Yeah.
of Las Vegas.
We're just gonna put up walls.
Yeah. And then it's like all of a sudden, everything's fine. Well, you get to the draft and you've got your 20 people that are sitting in the back room, right? And then they get called. So did you guys watch it?
No. I'm
I
still
did.
stuck on like, hey, we're gonna rent out a reception hall, and the NFL's like, hey, we're gonna rent out an entire city of
Yeah.
Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched I did watch a little bit of it.
So what was your takeaway from the first round from when they called the name? They called the name, the guy was there. What was your take?
like when you see them answer the phone?
Yeah, they answer the phone, and then they got to come to the stage. I'm going to see if your thought was the same as mine.
I mean, I'm well thinking back on other drafts. You look at the guy answering a phone, and you have two people, right? You have the guy that like family's exploding, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you have the other guy that's like trying to play it cool, but inside he's like, holy crap, like
Yeah.
there's millions and millions and I don't even know how many people watch the draft, 40, 50 million, probably as many as the Super Bowl. But my first, you see these guys called, and the guy that's playing it cool and like walking up, and you're like, dude, you're in Vegas, walking across a stage that's in the middle of a fountain or near a fountain or whatever, and it's like you're like trying to act like you're the coolest guy in the world, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna show no excitement for this, and it's like.
Yeah.
Like, I know what you're like. I don't know this specific feeling, but I know about that excitement. It's like, and I always laugh about that. I'm like, I would be dancing down the stage.
Well,
right?
then they get the Goodell, and they, for whatever reason, they started the thing.
They hug them.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, they all hate him.
They hate
right? As soon as they hug him, it's like, I don't like you.
So
it's like, you don't even represent me, technically.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So you'll remember this though if you watched it, right? So usually you get that reaction, right? And it's like literally probably a walk that's probably 30 feet away.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, last year was even longer because of the COVID protocols. They were all in their like own little squares or whatever. We like felt like it took them an hour to get to the stage.
So did you see them walk basically through the clown maze to get to the stage?
I did see that.
That's where I was going with that. It's like, hey, here's all this excitement.
Yeah.
Here's all this excitement. It's like, and then they're looking at the clock like, no wonder the show takes forever because it takes them 3 minutes to get to the freaking stage.
How last year was. It was like they were in these boxes, little cubicles out back, and it's like the walk from like the cubicle to like the stage. It was like the camera's on them the whole time. It's like, how long do I need to watch, Mac Jones walk from his cubicle to the stage, which is like a 5-minute walk?
They could have at least put like one of the airport guys, like one of the air traffic controllers, like control, because Sauce Gardner's coming down. Here he is.
The Bearcats getting 9 guys.
The highest draft pick in UC history, and he gets to this, like I said, this mirror maze, and gets to the point of like,
I almost like, where do I go?
Where do I go?
Yeah,
and he goes left, and somebody goes, no, that way. Like, come on, man, let the guy get up to the stage.
I don't ever remember outside the last years. I don't ever remember it being that long and like that confusing of a walk. It used to be like they just walk out of the stage.
Be like WWE, like they're just coming down the ramp to the stage.
Like they're handing them their hat. Goodell's got the jersey. It's like a 30-second like thing, like the hug, the picture, and then off, and then he's off to do interviews and stuff. It's like now it's like the whole one pick is like a 15-minute process.
And by the time it's done, the other team's already got their pick in.
Yeah. There's no build up to that next pick because it's like that process is so long now, and I guess they do that. I'm assuming they know something that we don't know as far as an entertainment process. Yeah. But it's just like, I did think that was super weird. Yeah, I didn't know that's where you were going, but yeah, the walk was very it was obviously confusing. And some of them, Sauce was probably apparently not listening when they were like, hey, when you get to this point, you go right. You know what I mean? Like, he probably wasn't listening to that when they brought that up.
And I was worried with the length of everything, and it was late. This was like we were talking last week, like the least sexy Bengals pick of all time because, like, you didn't know who they were going to get. They're picking 31st. Yeah. Like, it's like and then you're staying up to watch it. And it's like, if they trade the pick, I'm going to be so pissed. I would have been in bed 2 hours ago.
Especially now because they only do the first round.
The first round.
It used to be like the first 2 rounds, and then like the next night would be
put on the show.
Yeah.
Well, then you're watching the whole thing too, and then all of a sudden, you had the first trade or whatever it was, Marquise Brown from the Ravens. So the Ravens moved up, and I'm like, okay, what? And I was watching the Ravens, like, what are they gonna get? And it's like, okay, they end up taking, I think an offensive lineman. And then you watch all of a sudden, we got a big trade. Then the Titans traded A.J. Brown. It's like, whoa, they did what?
Yeah, because that's not typical of the NFL.
No.
Like that big. They're not. It's not like baseball where you're trading people. It's a lot of times hey, we want this guy for these amount of picks. But I think that actually included players and draft picks as well, which is not normal.
No.
Not normal at all.
So they trade him, and you're like, whoa, man, like these are big trades. And then people are just trading left and right, back and forth. And then then it gets to Pittsburgh, and I'm going, oh, please don't pick Des Ridder. Like, just because I don't want to root against him, but I would have. I'd be like, if he goes to Pittsburgh, I hope he sucks in the NFL. Yeah. Until his contract.
I hope he sucks long enough to stay for like 15 years, right?
Yeah. No, I hope he sucks long enough to get a new contract someplace else, and then is great at that other place.
Okay, yeah, right? Maybe that's a better route.
And they come up, and it's like, Kenny Pickett. I'm like, yes.
And somebody labeled him as the turnover machine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does turn the ball over a lot, but there's been a lot of great quarterbacks. Like that was the knock on Peyton Manning, right? It's like, oh, he throws all these interceptions. Like, yeah, then he also won 2 Super Bowls.
Right.
One of the greatest quarterbacks
most
ever.
Interceptions of
Yeah, I think he did.
quarterback
Yes,
ever.
yes,
Brett
he
Favre.
did.
Favre's turned it over.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
Yeah, what was funny too is like I heard Kenny Pickett, and I immediately, for whatever reason, I thought Kenny Powers.
Yeah, you're waiting for the mullet to
Yeah,
walk out
like,
on stage.
Kenny Pickett, Kenny Powers, and then all the trades happened
Maybe
again.
A jet ski through the
Yeah.
fountain.
I
I
think
love
if he
you,
tried
Kenny.
to pull off the fake slide in the NFL,
yeah,
he might not live.
Yeah,
He might. Yeah.
short-lived. Yeah,
They close
very
those
short-lived.
gaps a lot quicker in the NFL than,
Yeah,
than,
you're
than
not
they
gonna
do
have
in
the time
college.
to do that.
And
Well,
that fake move is sorry.
Yeah.
We were-
By the way, here's your head.
here's your head, your
Yeah.
teeth, everything else. So we were talking before about the media, and I was listening to, I think it was Dan Patrick today coming in, and he was talking about how the media drummed up all of this support for Malik Willis.
I thought that dude could flat out play.
And he probably can.
He's got, everybody's like he's got like one of the strongest arms
Yeah.
that they've ever seen in a prospect, which is saying
I
a
watched
lot.
Liberty twice last year, and I'm like, man, that kid is
Doesn't matter where he's at,
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter the talent level. Like he's good player's a good player.
But
Right,
his
can't high talent.
his source, according to Dan Patrick, said before the actual draft that Malik Willis is a third-round talent or third-round grade,
Mhm.
right? And so, like, the media drumming up all this about he could go, and then they drag him to the actual draft, and then he's there not for 1 round, not for 2 rounds, but he gets drafted halfway through the 3rd round to Tennessee. Like,
Which you would think, like the NFL, like obviously, Goodell has his ear to the owners. It's like they had to know that like he wasn't going to get picked, right? And so you just drug him out there.
yeah,
And good for him because it was kind of one of those things. It was like the whole, they drag you in there and then you never get picked. It's
Yeah.
like that takes a lot of character to sit there and not be like,
that's
down.
Yeah, it was a weird draft. No running backs or tight ends in the first
That's
round
crazy.
since first time in the history, and we had Pickett going in 2nd round.
no, he was
So
20.
He was first round, but then the next quarterback picked was Malik, wasn't it, in the 3rd?
I think so.
Yeah,
So
Mhm.
I mean, you had 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds.
yeah, that's
It was just
unheard of.
Ritter
it was
went in the
defense,
3rd.
Defense.
And then
Okay,
he went. Malik went, and then it was like it was
Yeah.
like 3 picks.
It's
later.
crazy how
You know
those
what's
runs
awesome
happen.
Is because of this show and my passion for defense, and I've won you over for the Bengals defensive run in the playoffs and Super Bowl.
Draft more
So
defense.
the Tom and Q show is giving the best sales pitch on why defense wins, and the whole NFL has followed our trend.
Yeah, they have. If you look at, I've got their
That's all we
draft
talk
picks
about. That's all I
picked
talk
up
about.
right now. Dax Hill, defensive back out of Michigan. Mel Kiper had him ranked before the draft 14th best player available. They get him at 31. Cam Taylor-Britt, they trade up, defensive back out of Nebraska. Zach Carter, defensive lineman out of Florida. And I was watching videos of both these guys. And again, it's kind of like the comp numbers we talked about. They can show, they're only going to show the good
Last
ones.
week's unsung hero,
Yeah.
the guy that has that film ready
Ready
go.
for him, yeah.
Yeah.
And that poor guy, on Malik Willis, like, oh, I've had this like hour-long video on Malik Willis, but he's only in the 3rd round and nobody's watching the draft
Well, and
anymore.
then you have that situation, right? And then did you see who the Patriots took? They didn't even have video of the guy.
No,
They had no video of him. They went so
Oh,
far out
Belichick.
of right field to
Yes.
take this guy, and they're like, it was almost like you could almost see the like mad scramble. Like, you could almost feel the mad.
the
scramble
dude had a
line, like,
4th-round grade,
Yeah.
and everybody was like, I remember seeing that too. And then, but of
his
course,
film was tucked on the like back end of Saturday. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
the best
not
was
Thursday.
you watch and they go to the fans, like they always go to the fans, and like the Patriots fans, like they're so like, just just mesmerized, hypnotized by whatever the Patriots do. They had no idea who this guy was.
No idea, but they didn't get mad. Like,
No,
the
they were
Jets- if the
yeah!
Jets did that, like they're burning down that life right now. But like the Patriots are like, I mean, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Like he hasn't like.
We need a lineman.
Yeah, it's like he knows what he's doing better than I do. It's like, and that is not any other fan base.
No.
Any other fan base.
Need a house? Got you.
Got
Need
it.
a mortgage? Got you. Need an NFL draft pick?
Belichick. Yeah.
So they draft an offensive lineman in the 4th, another defensive back in the 5th, and then another defensive lineman in the 7th. On top of that, a lot of their free agent signees, which is always fun to watch too, is where the guys that were projected 3rd round picks, and then all of a sudden they don't get drafted. where do they go? And those guys make pretty good money.
Yep.
Those undrafted guys. So it is funny you brought up the unsung hero. That guy comes up. It's like, man, who had the video on Brock Purdy? Who is my unsung hero this week is Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant.
Last pick.
The very last pick. Great that you got drafted. But if he didn't get drafted, he's probably going to make more money as a free agent than he is if he
Probably.
actually gets drafted.
Yeah, as a backup quarterback, he probably does.
And then
But
he'll
it's
have
like, it's like one of those things. It's like it's like, but I was drafted.
Right,
I was drafted.
right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, is it worth the money? Maybe, I don't know. Probably not. But it's still one of those things. Like, oh, did you get drafted? It's like, yeah, I actually did.
Yeah, the assist,
You don't need to know I was the last pick. But,
Yeah.
the
Don't they
assistant,
have a jersey ready, like irrelevant?
yeah,
Yeah.
they do. It's got like the number pick on it or whatever.
the assistant to the assistant of the traveling secretary's secretary is the one that announced the pick.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Like some backroom person that runs the concession stands and out there like
Goodell's
out of a hat.
Goodell's already on vacation.
Yeah, he's well gone. You don't get the Goodell hug.
No Goodell hug for the Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. So yeah, it was fun. 9 UC guys were drafted, which they were the third highest Division I school
This is incredible.
under Alabama and LSU.
Wow.
Yep.
Good for Fickle. I mean, that's like talent evaluation
Oh.
that you have to have at his level because he's not getting those 4-star. And he might get some 4-star, but he's not getting those 5-star talents. So it's like, barring anything crazy, like this person's gonna be probably a draft pick, right?
Right.
Like he's getting these kids as 2-3 stars, and it's like you're developing into 5 stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Sauce Gardner's one of them. It's like it's
Highest
crazy.
draft pick they've ever had.
Yeah, 2 years ago when they played Georgia, I thought they physically belonged on the field with
Mhm.
big bad Georgia. And then this year, we talked about it after the game, was UC and Alabama. They physically belonged on that field. Like they matched blow for blow. There's some seasoned differences between the caliber of play, but
Yeah.
I mean,
In a few positions
they
that they
belong
might
there.
be outmanned in, but for the most part, like Sauce Gardner he belonged on that field.
Oh, yeah.
Bar none.
yeah, I think we
And he
abandoned our
deserved-
running game for UC. I would have liked to see
Yeah,
Ford
it-
get a lot more mixes in there,
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
Like
But-
Sauce Gardner going up against Jamison Williams, who was another first-round draft pick. It's like, did he give up some plays? Yeah, but it was like you saw, for the most part, it was not easy.
No.
And that's why they were running the ball, right? Like they weren't going to throw the ball at that guy.
Right.
He's a first-round draft pick. We're not throwing the ball at him. So
Not to
it's kinda
mention-
cool.
2 Colerain guys are now
Yeah.
in the NFL.
Yes, I saw that. One was, or no, they were both drafted, correct? Or
One
no?
was a free agent signing,
Yeah, and then Beavers.
and then Beavers was drafted.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where'd he go?
Yeah,
Was it the Colts?
Giants.
Giants.
Giants,
That's right.
yeah.
Giants.
Giants. And
So-
I was actually he was one of the guys that I thought I was like,
I was really hoping the Bengals would
I
get
feel
him.
like he's one of those is like his film is a lot better than like what you'll see on paper
Right.
kind of people. Like,
Yeah.
and like we were in Disney when they were playing Alabama, and like,
It's like, this
and he had a
guy's
couple
good.
plays, and like, and there was some Alabama fans sitting next to me, like in the bar, like watching us, and they're like, "Who's that guy?" Like we've, they've never like we don't watch
Been
UC
here all
football,
year.
but I'm like, he's good. And it's
Yeah.
like it just happened to go to
He's-
the high school I went to,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was like, it's like one of those things. It's like he won't pop off a stat sheet, but it's like you watch the film, the guy's kind of all over the
He's
place.
he's always by the
literally
ball.
every play.
Yeah.
This
Like-
guy's good on paper. This guy's good in a game.
This guy's actually good at football.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
But
take
there's
the
so
guy
many
that's good
people
at
that
football.
make money on that than that, right? But those guys in the end are going to make their money.
And
there.
Belichick
Oh, yeah.
is good at finding that guy.
Yeah.
exactly.
This guy can play. Yeah, that guy looks great on paper, but this guy looks good on the field.
Yeah,
I like this guy.
Well,
This
they
guy looks good on a stopwatch. This guy looks good getting to a
yeah,
tackle.
exactly.
they
Yeah.
had 9 guys drafted, and I wanted the Bengals to get Beavers because I, like you said, watched all their games last year. Like he can play linebacker. Like he can play linebacker and play in the NFL.
Yes, 100%.
Like, and the Bengals need linebackers. I'm like, perfect. And then the other guy was Myjai Sanders, who's big, tall, fast defensive end. Like you get a guy
Yeah.
like him in the 3rd, 4th, even 5th round. Like, dude, money.
Yeah, and then for me, it's like when Sam Hubbard got drafted by the Bengals. It's when they have that tie to the team that's more than just like, oh, I got drafted by this team.
This is my town.
This is
Mhm.
my hometown, like, and especially for them to be part of last year is this thing. Hubbard is, and especially he's a world class talent too. And it was like when they drafted him, I'm like this might be the start of something. And it's like they still need a quarterback. And then they got lucky enough to get a quarterback the next year. But it was like it's cool to have the local kids play for the hometown team. I mean, some of our best athletes, right, that play for the Reds and the Bengals are hometown kids, right?
Yep.
Gary Larkin, Pete Rose.
Pete Rose. Oh, where's the button? Can't say Pete Rose on this show.
No,
That's-
sorry. One of my favorite baseball players of all time.
Oh, ours too.
King Griffey Jr.
So our rule
King
on
Griffey Jr. Yeah,
So,
you know what I mean.
so our rule is we're
it's
not allowed
cool.
to have goat conversation. That's just like weak journalism, right? And
Yeah.
if your show's talking
Who's the
about
goat? Yeah.
the goat, you're just not.
But I was hoping they'd get Beavers because I thought that'd be really cool. to
Oh,
have
yeah.
More
Can we say Charlie Hustle?
no,
No.
no, because the reason being and if you listen to any,
So there's a guy that played for the Reds, has most hits in baseball. We're not allowed to talk
Yeah,
about
No,
no,
don't.
no,
because
can't do
it's just
that.
not. It's just like
Can't
weed,
do it.
Right?
And when you
Come
have
up
a
with good content.
when you have a show in Cincinnati, a radio show in Cincinnati, and any time that any of those sports shows are talking about Pete Rose, I'm like, yep, I'm out, because that means they have nothing.
Nothing better to
Unless
talk
Pete
about.
got
Nothing
another
better to
hit,
talk about? Yes.
got arrested, or God forbid,
Made
passed
it to
away,
the-
made it
Yeah.
to the Hall of Fame. Like, if I hear one more person, do you think Pete belongs in the Hall of Fame? I mean, come on,
Like,
that's what you
You know
got?
how many times we've had this discussion? It's
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
no, it's cheap. It's
Yeah.
cheap. Come up with something better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, staying on the
How
Bengals.
tempting is it to just go down that rabbit hole and start
I-
talking about it?
Not gonna happen.
I mean, I've read his book.
I
If you want
hold-
me to get into it. I can get
I
into
hold the
why I
button.
think he should be.
I hold the button.
Show's
It's
over.
like, well,
Shut it down.
D&D's worse than
Yeah,
gambling
here
on
we
sports.
go. Not happening. So, one of the Bengals' main free agents that I thought that they were going to let go signed back yesterday. Their punter, local guy,
Local
Yeah,
guy.
the other one.
punter, Kevin Huber, back with the Bengals. That was one I was like, yeah, I kind of understood that there's going to be a time for him to go, and I don't think he's the best punter, but their special teams are really good. So, like, you've got McPherson, who's had a phenomenal rookie
Yep.
season. Well, he's being led by his holder, who is just as important as the kicker.
Yep.
Easily as important.
They brought back the long snapper, so all three of those guys stay together.
So did they bring back their punter or did they bring back their holder?
I don't care. I'd read
Think-
it.
think
As long as
about
he's
how-
holding, I don't care.
Think about how those positions go unnoticed a lot.
Yeah,
Unsung hero.
unsung hero.
Unsung here, very
The
unsung.
holder.
But they are, and I love the Bengals. You know, I root for them all the time. But I've always been a Packers fan.
Yeah.
And to watch, as a Packers fan last year, like everybody's like, they're gonna make a run to the Super Bowl. I was like, there is gonna be a game in the playoffs that their special teams is 100% gonna give up a game.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be their first. And like, they're like, Justin said this. I'm like, because if you watch it, like, but no one thinks about like a punter is going to cost them
Right.
the game or a long snapper is going to cost them
Yeah.
the game. No one wants to ever hear that. It's
Being
like,
a Bengals
you're gonna
fan, I
throw-
do.
But here's the thing: it's like you're going to throw too many interceptions. You're going to, too many fumbles, whatever it might be. It's like you're always thinking about those things. You don't think, our punter's terrible, our long snapper's terrible. Like he's going to cost us a game one time, and until it happens, right?
That's
So like when they re-signed him, I was like, perfect. And hopefully people learn from the backers last year. It's like they lost on a block punt. Like how many games have been cost, but it can happen.
Yeah, I
right?
was talking to Jay Roden once about long snapping because he did it in
Mm-hmm.
college, and some of the things they do, man, they play like pig as long snappers. So they get down in a long snap situation, and they got to hit a spot. They're making it in baskets from a long snapping situation.
I'll be
They're
honest.
hitting
That's the
spots on wall,
one position
throwing
I
through
would not.
tires.
I
not
would
just
not wanna
that.
Be,
They've got to get the lace. They spin it to where the laces land exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you catch, boom, laces out. Damn.
Yeah.
It seems
And
like
so
the
rotation as a ball.
it
It's
seems like the hardest job and the most high pressure job because it's like one of those things. No one notices you until you mess up,
And then you're fired.
and then you're fired because
Yeah.
they'll just bring some other guy in the next week.
Yeah.
And
you have one job.
One job.
Yeah, one job. That's it.
I
No one's lined up in front of you. One job.
have snapped 1 million balls this week. That sounded bad.
Yeah.
I have. So they brought back the keys, and I said this last year. They would win 10 games last year. They ended up doing it. And the reason I said that was because they drafted a kicker and that had the big leg. Now, I didn't know he would be as good as what he ended up being, but it's such a game changer when all you have to do is get across midfield.
Yes, that's
And if you have that confidence in somebody that can get across midfield and he can nail it, well, you bring all three of those guys back, their dynamic doesn't change. So that still stays the same. Whereas if you added
Good point, man.
if you added a new holder with a second-year kicker,
And Kevin being here,
That's
and
a
he's,
great point.
and he's been through all of it, right? He's been
Yeah.
through the bad, the really, really bad, and he's been through the
Did you guys read
good.
his letter last year when they made the playoffs?
Yeah.
it's-
Oh, that was awesome. That was neat.
I don't know how many teams can be like, Well, one of our locker room guys is a punter. But I think the Bengals could actually say that because he's from here. He's been through the ups and the downs and the ups.
He's a credible human being.
Yeah,
well, and how much money are you really going to save by just bringing in a different punter? What, $10? Look, Kevin. Look, I swear we love you, but like you were just asking way too much. Like we can get this guy
for
McDonald's
$800,000.
Yeah. It's like
$700,000. You're asking for $850. Like, yeah, no.
Kevin walks back in. Like, I really don't feel like moving. Like, that's fine. Just give me whatever you're gonna give back.
This guy averages another half yard on his punt than you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's higher.
Right.
It's higher.
Yeah.
More hang time. So anyway, good. Bengals are doing good. The Reds suck. Worst record in baseball.
Is there a category below sucks?
The Florence Yalls are probably almost better than them.
What,
No offense to the Florence Yalls, but they
three drop pop-ups in a row. Which the first one's kind of questionable. I mean, against the net, maybe. I don't know. Probably still been
But
caught.
again, like the catcher has how many jobs, right? You're calling signals.
You're catching pop-ups.
I mean,
You're a big leaguer.
how many times they practice that in practice? Like a lot, I would imagine. Like the pop up and taking your helmet off and going to catch it. Like he probably practiced that thousands and thousands.
The one over the into the dugout. We see it a lot. We see it enough to know that's a catchable ball. He was probably 2 foot away from that ball.
And he stopped. Yeah.
Like he's reaching here and the ball's landing.
So this is where you guys have me. Is I'm so disinterested. I have no idea which play you're talking about.
Yeah,
it went viral on Twitter. Barstool Sports was on it. I think John Boy was on it. Like it went viral. Reds dropped 3 pop-ups in a row. 3 consecutive pitch. Boom. Catcher against the net. Boom.
Yeah.
Third baseman going over, just again where the camera is over that padded wall. Just that catch here. And then the third one was catcher, pitcher, and I think the second baseman made somewhat of an effort to come in. And they were standing right here.
It's like the Spider-Man meme where everybody's just pointing.
Yeah.
and you see the pitcher at the last second, and he missed it by a foot. It just landed right in the middle of all of them, and it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, like what?
It went viral on Twitter.
So that leads me to kind of a wrap-up question. I'm a huge Reds fan, but I'm disinterested right now. They're not good, one. They're not interesting, more important. I really have. Last year, I took my kids down. We had a great time. You and I went down to some games together. Like, we've had a great time. Like, I'm not even watching them on TV. One, because the MLB and their Bally's thing is stupid, but like, I'm just disinterested. I'm not even looking for highlights. I just fully expect them to do exactly what you guys just said that they did. And I'm like,
you don't even need to see it.
Yeah, I'm like,
you don't even need to see it.
I'm like,
I don't even get to see it be bad.
And you want us to go to games. What would it take? What would it take to get you to go to a Reds game?
An absolutely freed up day with nothing going on, which doesn't happen in my life, and events around it. So it's like, hey, you guys want to meet up here, have a concert, something like, hey, you want to meet up here? We're going to go have a couple drinks, catch somebody's in town, and they want to see a Reds game, and my evening is absolutely, completely freed up. So it would take everything around it to be like, oh, yeah, we'll squeeze in a Reds game and catch a few innings and then go on about our day.
So let me ask,
just because of
using your logic, most of the time, right? So a Reds game most of the time would be like the main event of the evening, right?
Yeah.
Does that conversation now change and say, hey, you guys want to go to dinner? We'll go to the Reds game beforehand, and then we'll.
Yeah, maybe not even that. Like maybe for 3 or 4, 3 innings. And
coming in from out of town.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can get some cheap tickets.
Want to go sit over here?
Yeah.
Well, it now becomes the point. Now it's like where people want to go to the games to see the
other team.
Yeah,
I have a nephew who's he's 10, and they're coming into town from Texas, and his favorite team's the Dodgers, and they just happen to be in town. Like the day after he comes back, he's like, I want to see like the Dodgers are my team. And I'm like, we're gonna go there. And he's like, he's probably like, well, we may have like decent seats. I'm looking at tickets for that game already, and I was like, oh, they're gonna be cheap. Well, no, they're not, because you have all these people that are like, we actually want to see a good baseball team.
Yeah.
It's like we want to see the Dodgers.
They're the world champions.
Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna start to see that, but it's like, unlike football, baseball's a little harder to do that, where football is like one game.
They should put a run rule in the Major League
You just
Baseball.
answered, for me to go to a Reds game, I'd have to see the '89 Cubs.
Yeah. The 19. I'm gonna need to see like the 1925 Yankees with like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
I will go then.
Yeah, if they can come back.
So actually, they may stand a chance against that '89 Cubs team right now, like this very moment, right now.
Mark Grace,
Ryan Sandberg,
Dunston, all those guys, man.
Yeah, but
that was my favorite all-time team.
Well, we talked about it, before we started. It's like, there's nothing better than like if your team is good, like just taking a Wednesday and going to a Wednesday special and like going down there. Game starts at 1. Like you said, you're done. You can be done by like whatever time you really want to be done. But if your team's good, you're like, I'm gonna stay till 4:30 till the end of this thing.
The weather's good.
The weather's turning. Good like May business day special. Like there's nothing better. We went. I went to like 3 of them last year.
Yeah.
And I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, I have no desire to do it.
Yeah.
Like none. It's like as much as I would love to break up the week with a Reds game, I'm like go down there and see a baseball game. Like I have no interest in watching them lose. 7-0 and not score a single run and have like 2 hits.
No offense, Votto.
Yeah.
So mine would be Diamond Club.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would do that. Free, of course. Not buying it, free.
Yeah.
So if anybody's out there, hey, you got Diamond Club seats, like
it's $60
more than happy to go. Same deal, free tickets, but also to like where I can have free food and drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just getting the atmosphere.
Yeah.
The game, so what? So what?
Yeah.
The same attitude that they have is what I have. So what?
You're there to just see some professional athletes hang out, talk.
Yeah, I mean the ushers are awesome there.
Yeah. Well, and like we were talking, like I think the one thing we talked about is like if we could go in the handlebar, like I'd go in there because like the entertainment's not even the game.
Right.
Like you're sitting there talking to people. We ran into like 5 or 6 when we were up there last year. It's like we ran into like 5 or 6 people we knew. So, it would definitely take really good seats for free.
Yeah.
Speaking of ushers, we were in Chicago, Wrigley Field. Me, John Marizzi, and Doug Ratch, and John. They were 20. I was 21 at the time, and the ushers walking by, and he had his thing. He's like, Budweiser beer, Bud. I
missed that.
And Johnny was like, "Can I get one?" He's like, "ID." It's like, no. It's like, no ID, no beer. Budweiser.
Yeah.
Just
no ID, no beer. Budweiser.
Didn't miss a beat.
Didn't miss a beat. No beer. Budweiser.
I haven't been down this year, obviously. Did they bring back the guys going from seat to seat? I can't remember if last year they had that or not.
I haven't been to a game yet this year, but I think the Bengals brought back people.
Did they?
Vendors, yeah. So I would assume the Reds.
The Reds would do it then.
But those, when they're really bad, like those are the guys that are most interesting.
Oh yeah.
It's like I wasn't planning on drinking another beer, but I'll buy from you. Like yeah.
And you can hear them throughout the entire stadium.
Well, especially if there's like 6,000 people there or whatever the first day game had. So yeah, it's not fun. It's a big part of Cincinnati summers.
Right.
And it just feels like it's like the first normal season we have, and it's like we've got to suffer through this.
Right.
And then it's like a missing link. Because there's been many times when I was a kid, it's like, hey, it's like, baseball's over and like end of July, like travel baseball or whatever you got going on. It's like, let's go catch a Reds game. It's like, perfect. Like, let's go. It was probably a big part of your guys' childhood too. And it just
100%.
seems like a missing link. And it's like, I don't like know if I want to take my kids down there to be like, this is not baseball. Like, just letting you know, like, this is not good. It might be baseball.
You didn't do your homework?
Yeah.
I'm taking you to a Reds game.
Yeah, you're going to suffer through this with me.
But that's also like
no, you can keep your phone. I'm taking you to a Reds game.
Part of
that's your punishment.
The aging process is my kids. If I said, "Hey, we're going to the Reds game," like they don't even follow them. You know what I mean? Like growing up, like like unless it's on YouTube or TikTok, like.
Yeah.
Man, that's interesting.
Because I remember used to when
my brain's going a whole other place right now. Like, how's that going to affect future professional sports?
Why do you think Votto joined TikTok?
Yeah. Right? Because
he's killing it.
He is. He's actually pretty good. But like I remember like when the Reds were in the hunt like '95 when I first started really following baseball in like '99. It's like I remember like getting the newspaper like, all right, like how many games back are we? It's like kids have zero interest in that, unless they're like, like so they see the player on TikTok or whatever it might be.
What's a newspaper?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you get the newspaper. It's like, all right, you got to flip through the sports section to get to the standings. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
That's still in my muscle memory, man. That's why I got the ESPN app. I go straight there and go straight to standings.
Yep. Now
Like,
you
there's
can.
nothing in between. I
you
go
don't have
straight to
to wait-
standing. I'm like, man, they look good. Stats. Whoa.
You don't have to wait for your dad to be done with the newspaper.
No,
before you
that's
get-
right.
get it.
Where's Barry Larkin in batting average?
Yeah.
And Mariano Duncan. It was always Barry Larkin, Mariano Duncan, and Hal Morris. Always were like above 300 and like battling out for like the batting title.
Right.
And I would always look for them. Like, okay, because there was never a Red back then that was like leading the league in home runs. Maybe Mitchell, Kevin Mitchell.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
one of my favorite Reds of all time.
Eric.
Eric Davis is my favorite Red of all time.
I won't say who my favorite red is, but
Shoot.
He says Pete Rose.
I was gonna say it. You almost had me. Yeah, you almost had me.
So, his favorite player wears number 14, or wore number 14. He's
You know, the funniest thing is I never saw him play. I've only seen highlights, obviously, because I was born in '90.
right.
Yeah.
Like I never saw him play, but like the highlights, like, and I grew up when like the highlight you could actually start watching like old videos on the internet.
Yeah.
Dial-up internet. It's like, you know, I remember watching his videos. And it's like I've never even seen him play in a real person. You know,
Right.
but I always was a big Sean Casey fan.
Yeah.
They-
That's a good one.
We love Casey. We love Sean Casey.
Yeah.
Hilarious storyteller. Amazing.
The mayor.
The mayor.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about does it for today. Justin, thank you for
Appreciate
letting
you
us
guys
come out
coming
here,
out,
hang
yeah.
out, and do the stuff that we did today. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully, we get you back on here.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
talking mortgages and keep talking trends and not scaring people from
Yeah.
this big balloon that's about to not bust.
Yeah,
So-
and if you know, I always keep my Facebook pretty updated with stuff that I find interesting. So you find me on there. My business page also, and then I have a blog. You can find it on my Facebook page that we kind of talk about that stuff. So
We'll certainly do that. We'll tag it here.
Very nice.
I know I tagged your personal page on here as well.
yeah,
So yeah, hit him up. Great dude, very knowledgeable. We didn't know that we actually liked millennials, but apparently we do like millennials now after all the information we got today.
They feed my kids.
With
They pay my
yes,
And
with
like
their
I said,
brains
yeah,
and their neuroscience.
and all that stuff. Yeah.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We are out of here.